Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Bodybuilding for Everybody podcast. I'm your host, Caleb Disney, and today I am joined by IFBB pro and posing extraordinaire, Jarek Crew. Jarek, how are you doing?
Good, man. I am
Thanks for
chilling.
being on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man. It's been crazy these last couple of weeks, but
I know.
part of games, part of building, part of being uncomfortable.
Yeah, well, we're going to dive into all that. Because I got to talk to you a very, very little bit about all the changes you've been going through recently, but I want to kind of dive into that a little bit more. But first, I want to start just with a little bit about you and your history and everything. I think anybody who follows bodybuilding by now probably knows who you are, especially anybody who follows classic physique and really cares about posing. I think it's safe to say you are one of the main names that comes up these days when people talk about modern gifted posers. You're right up there with Terrence and with Rachel Daniels.
That's big.
It is big. Yeah. I mean, I cannot remember where it was, but there was a guest posing you did this year. And it was with that Hallelujah song.
Yeah.
And that gave me literal actual chills down my spine watching that shit. That's the kind of thing that I used to like daydream like about being able to do someday when I was like 19, 20 years old on the treadmill after training. I'd be like, someday, man, someday I'm going to wow people like this. And I see you do that and deliver those feelings to me that I hoped to, be able to put out someday. And that's just incredible, dude. How long have you been a pro now?
I turned pro in 2018
Okay.
at Team Universe. So
okay.
That'll make 4 years?
Yeah. I vaguely remember, I didn't know who you were yet, but I followed Bodybuilders Without Borders even back then. And I remember the hair. I remember you, and there was another guy who went pro somewhere around that time who I haven't seen much of lately, but he also had the big like dreads up.
Yeah.
I think he was out of Houston.
Yeah, wasn't he? I think he was in my class, right?
He might have been, yeah, because there and
he played second, I think.
Yeah. So it's between so I remember you because of the hair, right? And that was a really, I mean, it was super unique and it was really cool and added to your silhouette, and I think a really cool way. But I mean, you cared about your posing even back then, correct?
Oh yeah, very much so, man. And I think that was something that gave me that advantage, that edge going into Team Universe. And I only know that because all the rest of the guys in my class were huge. Like I was the smallest guy in my class, bro, and we pulled out first place. And I think that had part of it was due to just my presentation, and then also obviously my conditioning.
Yeah. So how long had you been bodybuilding prior to taking the run for your pro card?
Started in 2015 originally.
Okay.
Where I did my first show. It was the Dexter Jackson Classic. And for those of you who don't know, I did men's physique.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
okay.
it was crazy. Yeah, I had the board shorts on, man, in 2015. Then that's when I kind of transitioned 2 years later to Classic. But yeah, to answer your question, 2015. So it'd be about 3 years prior to that run.
What drew you into bodybuilding originally, especially considering your first crack at it was in a different division?
It was just an influence at the current gym that I was at. It was actually Planet Fitness. So I wasn't into bodybuilding.
No kidding. Okay.
So it was actually at Planet Fitness, man. Older dude. He was in his 50s, late 50s, and he just looked jacked. I mean, in person he looked phenomenal, but obviously, like when you're on stage, it's a totally different story.
Yeah.
Especially with with where I'm at now and the guys the level of physiques that are on stage now. He would be definitely like the last call outs. But anyways, I just always admired his, him being, at his age and being in shape. And I was like, man, what do you do? Like, he's like, man, I compete. And I was like, compete. Then he kind of gave me the rundown, and he let me know, like, I'm competing this following weekend, actually. So, week went by. He comes in the gym with a fucking gold medal saying he won his class. I'm like,
Yeah.
I can do this shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. If he can do it, I can do it.
Like anything, I'm just being confident. Like I know I can.
Yeah.
So that's when I took it up, man. In 2015, I just went ahead and started prepping. I did an 8-week prep. And it's crazy because my first show was like 2 days after my birthday.
Okay.
And so I did that and placed overall in men's physique, man. My first show. And then ever since then, I just kind of fell in love with it, got a passion for it.
So your first show going into men's physique was probably just the natural decision because you had the muscle for that already, I'm guessing. And
then too, I didn't have really much knowledge on the sport and the divisions.
Okay.
I heard about classic, but I had already like chose men's physique and kind of just went with it.
So was classic kind of something you picked after you had, the dust settled from that first show? You knew that you wanted to keep pursuing this in some capacity. And you just kind of thought more about the look that you wanted for yourself, and was classic more of that kind of ideal?
Yeah. So I had the legs, and I would get like, my coach at the time would tell me, you should just do classic. And but part of me too was just the fact that after like diving into classic a little bit and learning about it, the routine, I was actually fearing being on stage for that long with something that I created myself and pretty much dancing in front of hundreds of people. Whereas
dancing
forward, front pose, back pose, get off stage. So that was a part of the reason why I was holding off on classic. But I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Well, you basically just answered it. So I was wondering like what that process was like once you realized you wanted to keep, pursuing bodybuilding in some fashion, deciding to get back on stage, not in men's physique again, but move up to classic physique. And I think you hit this is what I was hoping to hear, but I didn't know was the routine and the posing and the artistry involved was a big selling point for you. You compared it. Go ahead.
Yeah. So at first I was fearing being on stage that long because I was never that guy. I mean, I'm a Leo. I like kind of have the center of attention sometimes, like, unintentional. But being on stage like that was something that I always feared. So it was almost like I was like kind of nervous about getting into it. But when I got into it and I actually jumped and did it, I did my first routine. It was a freestyle. And I think it was at Mid-Florida Classic. There's what's his name? What's the promoter in Orlando? Deke Warner.
Okay.
He threw that show. Really good show. I did my first classic appearance there, and when I tell you, bro, when I went on that stage and I freestyle, the audience was just like loving it. I'm not sure what I did, bro. I'm sure it wasn't like the best, but that energy that I received, that validation, like you're supposed to be here, that's when I got hooked onto the presentation aspect.
So you said freestyle. So at this point, had you been practicing, your kind of flow and freestyle posing, or
So once I decided to do classic, during pre-contest preparation, I started just kind of researching. That's when I started researching like the golden era, Arnold. Now keep in mind, I'm not really into bodybuilding at this point. Like I just got into the sport. I didn't even know about competing in 2015, right? So I didn't know about these modern guys like Rough Diesel and Kai Green and everything like that. I was researching like the old era, like Franco Colombo, Bob Harris, Lee Labrada, Muhammad Makawi. And it was dope as hell. I was like, yo, this shit is crazy. Classic is actually pretty hard. So then I started trying to mimic, the movements and then try to just pretty much like freestyle and try to mimic what they do, but try to do it my own way. And then, the show came and it was time to perform. I didn't have a routine. I didn't know how to go about creating a routine or piecing it together. I just like, you know what? I'm just gonna freestyle. I'm gonna choose a song that I like, and then see what happens. And that's what happened.
Okay. And did you figure it out flow, right?
Yeah, pretty much, bro. It just, and it's like one of those things like, you won't know until you actually do it,
Yeah.
I always like tell people, like, from my experience, like, just do it, you know, just do something, you know what I'm saying? Don't ponder about it. Don't think about it, you know, because you're going to be your own limitation, you know, and
Yeah.
that's what I experienced and what I learned, you know. So if it wasn't for me to jump out there and, you know, face that fear factor, you know, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I've been hearing a lot more, a lot lately, is you just got to dive in with both feet. And, you know, if you wait to try to make it perfect, you're probably just not going to do it.
Yep.
And it's better to get in there and fail and at least be in the process of doing it now, instead of still sitting on the sidelines waiting for that perfect time to jump in.
Right.
That's really cool, man. So creating a posing routine is interesting. That's something that I've been curious about, because, and you compared it to dancing. And I've always seen that parallel. You know, I know Arnold, I mean, you see the classic start of pumping iron, you see Arnold learning how to hit certain body positions from a dancer, right? He's learning ballet. I know he doesn't get, I don't think he gets enough credit for his mastery of posing, but Breon Ainsley also has gone on record saying that he spent time, you know, working with, I believe, ballerinas also, or some form of dancers. Yeah. And for similar purposes, to kind of develop like this flow that you can then kind of transpose bodybuilding poses into. Now, obviously you've really mastered freestyling, and that's really cool. The fact that you can just like hit a really complete looking routine, you know, without any practice, but you also clearly put together really complex actual routines, coordinated routines, like the one we saw. What show was that you hit that Hallelujah routine?
That was at the Tennessee Valley, Greater Tennessee Valley, I think.
Okay. I'm gonna, if you can find where you have that posted somewhere and send it over to me after this, I'm gonna link that in the video description, because I've never seen posing like that. I mean, Terrence is a fantastic poser. His Survivor routine is, you know, legendary now, but that was neck and neck for best routine I've ever seen somebody put together.
Oh, wow.
What is it like? Yeah, and no, dude, I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass. Like, when people watch this thing, they're gonna see like, holy shit, you know. What is it like putting together that routine? What does the process even look like? Where do you start?
So honestly, it starts from the song.
Okay.
So I need some type of inspiration, right? It could be from a song, it could be from other forms of art, it could be from other artists, it could be from my emotions. So I need some type of influence, and that influence or inspiration drives creativity. All right. So in order for me to put together something creative, I need that driving force. And so once I receive that, that's when I sit down and you know, listen to the song. So that's the first and foremost. Like, song has to be first and foremost. Once I get that song down, something I like, I'll just freestyle a segment, like the first 30 seconds, or I'll just freestyle the entire song, just play with it. Then I'll pick up transitions and moves that I'm like, oh shit, okay, this would be dope here, right? And so another thing you want to think about too is what the words that the song is conveying, right? The expression of the song has to match the expression of your routine as well. It has to make sense. So even the words within a song will generate creative ideas and poses and transitions, right? So it's almost like you're speaking to the audience in a form of bodily expression. And I think that's what makes it so dope. So, and then from there, I may get like 30 seconds down, and then, okay, I like this 30 seconds. Let's work on another 30 seconds or another segment. And then I just freestyle the next segment until I'm like, okay, this is tight. And then I'll save it, start from the top, run it straight through. So that'd be a whole minute, and then rinse and repeat. And then once I finish the entire project, now I go back almost like a review and polish. I'm like, okay, how can I make this even better? Like, what can I add? What details can I add to really have the audience be like, holy shit, right? So that's when you get the facial expressions, you get the hand the different finger movements, you get the spins, you get the cadence, you know, changes in cadence. You know, you get the just when if you see an artist or a posing artist on stage and they're reciting the song as they're posing, that's how you know they've really worked on their routine.
Right. They're like saying the words along.
Yeah. By the end of that process, bro, you've listened to that song like a million times, bro. So it's like, if you're not singing a song while you're posing, bro, you probably haven't practiced enough.
Oh, of course, I bet. So that's super cool. I've never heard it detailed out like that. So you go through multiple passes, right? And what I'm thinking about now is like somebody who's composing a song, they have sheet music. You know, there's a universal language for music that we know, they know how to write it out. So they're writing the notes, right? And so that way they remember what's going on. In posing, how you can't do that. You can't write, you know, you can't write it down, or can you? Are you filming yourself while you're doing these, like making these initial like first 30-second segments, or how are you memorizing so you start with the poses, right? And then once you have the poses down to go with the song, then you go back, you add in the transitions. And once you have the transitions down, you start to put in the little, like the bonus material, right? You're putting in, the polish, so the hand movements, the facial expressions, the changing up speeds and slowing down, speeding up. But as you're going through all that, how are you remembering, at least at the beginning stages? You know, I go from pose A to pose B to pose C. Are you recording yourself? Go ahead.
So I did miss that point, or left that point out. So I do either write it down, or I do record like those segments. So I go back as a review like the next day, or sometimes I might not even go back to the routine until the following week, because I don't like to force it. That's another thing I don't like to do. I don't like to force it. Then the routine it becomes more of it's not as genuine, right? So when I come back, I look at that video like, okay, this is where I left off. All right, let's go again. But also, I may also write in notes that I understand. Obviously, like if you see the notes that I have down in my notes in my iPhone, you'd be like, what the hell is this? So I like simple notes that I can understand, where it's not too cluttered, and then it'll kind of remind me of what I did. But there's a few ways of going about putting together a routine. Like I'm not always putting together a routine the same way, or the standard of procedure is not always exactly the same. So I put together a routine one time doing cardio fasted, and visualizing it in my head, writing it down, and then I'll go home and perform it. So that's super cool. It gets to that point though, because before I wasn't able to do that. So after a certain amount of time of just continuous practice and deliberate actions and deliberate practice, you'll be able to gain that that skill set. Just like any skill in any profession, that skill was derived from just doing it so much and so long. And I remember talking to Rev Diesel one day, because sometimes I'll shoot him my videos, personally. It was before the Chicago Pro. I shot him like, hey man, what do you think? This is gonna be my, debut routine. Any thoughts would help, I would really appreciate it. He's like, yeah, man, this is tight. It's so crazy, man, because I was gonna do the same thing. And we was kind of chopping it up. And I was like, man, so I was always curious about his process of putting together routines. So I was like, what's your process? Like, what do you do? He's like, man, honestly, sometimes I just really just sit down and visualize it and then just write it down. And I never understood how the hell he was able to do that.
Writing down poses.
But it's because he's been doing it for so long. And at that point in time, I wasn't quite there yet. Now I'm in those shoes and I'm like, okay, it just takes time to build that skill, that skill set.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So you kind of almost have your own language for when you're putting together notes. So you have like ways, a word or something, you can represent a 3/4 back pose, or, a front double bicep, or, different. And then you have poses with specific twists too, if you're doing a routine, doesn't have to be. So yeah, that's that's kind of what I suspected, but I just wasn't sure how people went about doing that. I'm sure it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, so
The way we express art is going to be different. The way we create it is going to be different.
yeah,
I can't give you a standard procedure like this is how you do it.
No, of course not.
You do
Of course not. But I think for people who can, who maybe look up to their favorite artists, so people who see your work and they want to emulate it, people who want to be like you, their own version of, like you, right?
Yeah, right.
I think it's probably really helpful to be able to get a look inside that process and see, this is what's going through his head when it's happening. So how long did it take you to put together that guest posing routine, the one we're talking about?
So some people don't realize this, but that actually was my pro debut routine.
Okay.
That was not finished.
Okay.
So I was able to get through, I think, like a minute of the routine for my pro debut, which is very upsetting and very frustrating.
Isn't it supposed to be like 3 minutes for pros?
Yeah, it's supposed to be. That's what I thought. So I put together the whole song.
Yeah, that's got to be disappointing.
Yeah. So prior to that, obviously, I worked on it to that point. So I would say, in preparation for my pro debut, I worked on it for about 8 weeks.
Okay.
Then I spent another 8 weeks for the guest posing, but I changed a lot of things, and I really had a chance to, because it was already pretty much mapped out. It was already pretty much done. It was going to be a dope ass routine, so I was able to finish it for my pro debut as well. So it was already up there. So I just elevated even more with that took advantage of that time and just kind of just added in and polished up and kept every week was adding in something and polishing something up to the point where I was like, yo, this is gonna be crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you ever did something or worked on something, you're like, yo, how the fuck did I do that shit?
Yeah. Well, yes, and I think that it's really a testament to you had it done. You put time into it and it was quote unquote finished, but then you kept working it. I think that and it shows in just every little detail of that routine was like it looked intentional. And so the whole thing is packed full of good expressive stuff, but you just kept going in and refining and adding little bits here anywhere you could find space for it to fit. And it's like cooking something, then just like keeping it marinating for longer and longer and longer. It just gets better, it just gets more flavor.
A lot better.
So that's really cool. So you mentioned Terrence, which obviously he is still, I think, a bit one of the biggest name in posing today. And you are now working with him as a coach. So that doesn't surprise me at all. You both are really, really unique as far as your specialty, which is posing, and expression of that, that flow and that art with our physiques. And so obviously you guys were in contact with each other. You already mentioned you'd ask him for ideas and things like that. You guys would kind of talk and chop it up and stuff. And also I realized he was with a different coaching company for a long time. And so I didn't even realize he'd started this new company until you said, hey, I'm going to go be a part of this. Yeah. So how did that come about? And we don't have to get into this too in depth, but just, just gives you a chance to plug your coaching. And I'm curious how this relationship kind of, played out.
Yeah. Well, like you said, we already had like a relationship before that even kind of, the opportunity came. And so just long story short, he reached out to me just out of the blue. And I'm like, man, listen, if anybody knows Rough Diesel, he's a very busy dude. He's not very responsive sometimes, but that's just him. He's very reserved sometimes. And, so when he hit me up, I was like, this is not Rough Diesel. Like, he's not going to hit me up out the blue, So I'm like, hey, what's up, man? What's going on? He was like, how's everything going with Flo and your current coaching team? I'm like, everything's going good, man. Everything's going good. We're still in the stages of, because you remember we just pretty much started out not too long. I think it was around that time we were like 3 months in, 4 months in, something like that. Okay. So I was like, everything's going good, man. We're still in like pretty much the first stages of the company. We're kind of slowly building things up. And he's like, yeah, man, I was wondering if you were, interested in being a part of Iron Eden. And so I was on the fence with things because one, like Ruff is definitely inspiration, a big inspiration, pretty much like almost like a mentor in terms of presentation,
Yeah.
And then Cameron, he's like a mentor for coaching. So it was like, you know what I'm saying? But, it was one of those opportunities where, you would never know like if you would be able to be presented with that again,
Yeah.
And under the circumstances where we currently were with the league, I wanted a little bit more, I guess support in terms of, marketing and things like that, and nothing to take away from Women with the Lead. I love Women with the Lead. They're dope team. I've learned a lot from Cameron, and where Ruff was at in his career, obviously there's more leverage.
Yeah,
that's realistic. So I was like, man, I'm gonna take the opportunity. So we went with that, and it was a tough decision, by all means, but I think it was the right decision to make.
No, I agree. No, I think it's the obvious choice for you, just because you have your niche, and that is presentation and posing. Terrence has his niche, which is presentation and posing, and you already should be in the same sentence whenever posing is mentioned in modern bodybuilding. Both of your names should be in that sentence. And I mean, for me, they have been for a long time now. I think for a lot of people they have been, but this really solidifies that, and it makes sense. It seems like I don't know who else he's got, but I know a couple guys that Terrence has coached who are also really, really into the posing aspect and do routines for people and things like that. And it just makes sense that that's kind of the home for that, I think. Yeah. So, not to touch on that for too long, I'm super excited just to see how that goes for you. It seems like you found a good home. You're working with the best, and you are among the best, and so I wish you the best there.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, dude, of course. So you went to the Arnold. You got an invite to the Arnold, and you dyed your hair pink. And you had a really impressive routine. I mean, it was there's some cool stuff I want to unpack in there, man. I think, what was it like knowing, like getting the invitation, like, hey, we want you to go to, you are a classic physique competitor, classic, like the modern embodiment of the golden era in artistry.
Pretty much,
according to some of us. We want you to come compete here. What was that like?
Man, it was just like, it was almost the feeling that I had when I turned pro in 2018.
Okay.
It was just a lot of like insight and this retrospect on, everything I've done up until that point. I just finished like 2 pro shows, so, and the last one wasn't so, I mean, 4th place is still like really good, but it was definitely like discouraging, and
you have a higher standard for yourself.
Yeah. It was pretty rough. So just come off of that, and it wasn't something planned. I was like, me and Cameron talked about it. I was like, hey, I mean, worst come to worst, they're gonna say no. I mean, let's see what happens. And we had to fill out application, submit a resume, our bodybuilding competition history, and some photos. And good thing I had some really good photos.
Yeah.
I submitted the best ones I had. Well, Cameron actually sat down together and submitted ones we thought were the best ones.
Okay.
And so did JT. And so we did at the same time. Got it in.
JT also applied.
Yeah. And actually, we applied so late. We had it like overnight. I think we had it overnight something through the mail. We almost missed the cutoff. So
yeah.
And shout out to JT for that, because if it wasn't for JT, I would have missed the cutoff to even apply. So we did that, and I guess we had to wait for the response via email. So I ended up getting an email at this current time. I was visiting California. I wasn't living there at the moment.
Yeah.
And we had a spot downtown. And I remember walking downtown, and it was crazy. Joe Watts.
Oh yeah.
Freaking sent me a post. I think it was an Arnold lineup post. Bro, I didn't even check my email at this point.
But you were in it.
Through a post I was shared from Joe, I think it was Joe Watts, if I can remember. I think it was.
Okay.
And it had my name on the list, bro. And I was like, yo,
yeah,
like, this is a scam. I was like, Joe Watts is scamming me.
He's fucking with you.
Yeah. So I go to my email, and there, the email was there. So immediately, bro, once I got a validation, tears started going. Like,
yeah,
I'm walking, like, and people look at me crazy, like, why is this motherfucker, this big ass motherfucker walking around crying and shit?
That's crazy.
Like, yeah, bro, it was like tears of joy, excitement, just overwhelming, anxiety, everything.
Yeah.
Because like it was like, yo, this is like the biggest accomplishment that I've ever had, so far up to this point. Yeah. And I immediately called Cameron, and I let him know. I was like, yo, bro, we got invited to the Arnold, bro. He was like, stop lying. I was like, bro, check my Instagram right fucking now. And he was like, yo, that's crazy. And I'm over here just like talking to him, crying and shit. But yeah, that's how it went, bro.
Okay, well, shout out to JT competing at the Olympia this weekend.
Yeah, shout out JT, my boy.
That's crazy. Okay, so and then the Arnold was I think interesting. That was an interesting era for you, because I feel like from the outside looking in, it looked like through that whole process and coming out the other side, you really started to kind of come into your own and continue to solidify yourself and like your identity, like who you feel like you are in this sport, in your profession. You rolled up to the Arnold with fucking pink hair. You got your eyelids tattooed right after the Arnold, right? And or right before.
Before.
Yeah. So, but during
it was actually the Texas Pro Prep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I thought that was really cool. I remember I was streaming the Arnold, and I see, hey, there's Jarek, and they're talking about your hair, and I'm like, bro, stop talking about this dude's hair. Talk about his. And at the end, I feel like they go, hey, he's got some nice posing. I'm like, yeah, no shit. Like you should have focused on that. But it's funny because it made you memorable. I mean, the people who knew you, like me, we were already looking for you.
Yeah.
The posing, I'm sure, caught some people's attention, and for the rest of people, the hair did it.
Yeah.
And so one way or another, everybody knew you were there, and took something away from that. Like what was going through your head when you did? I mean, your hair looks sick now too, but that was the first time I think you really like went that like flashy with something in bodybuilding. What was the thought process there? What were you hoping to accomplish, or was it just on a whim?
So honestly, if you notice, and I mean, you probably notice, anybody who's really been following me, since I started my pro career, every single show I've dyed my hair.
Okay.
A different color.
Okay.
So Chicago Pro, it kind of just started, and it started really, really, really like conservative.
Subtle.
Had a little bit of red at the top. It wasn't like fully. And shout out to Julie. She did it at the time.
Oh, Juju?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she painted my nails black.
Yep, I remember that.
So from there, it was just a pregame ritual. And I kept that in the bag. And so the second show was at the Chicago Pro. It was the Texas Pro, where I dyed my hair silver.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty dope. That was my favorite color. And then the Arnold Classic, obviously. And I was like, what should I do this time? And I want to do something really like out the bag and just eye-catching, because I mean, it's the Arnold Classic. And yeah, there's a method to my madness, of course. I want to be remembered, right? And so what would look cool, but not too flashy, where it's like, bro, what are you doing? But still be able to be captivating and add some nostalgia to that moment. And so I went with that. And actually, my wife is always the one who gives me ideas of, you know, even down to my nails, bro. Like she gives me all the ideas. Like I get some nail art sometimes. For this particular show, I did do nail art for the first time instead of the solid black. It had elite at the time. It had elite on one hand, and it had some random stuff on the other. And then I was like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna dye my beard too."
That's right. That's right.
I'm about to go all out. This is the Arnold. I don't know when the next time I'll be on the Arnold stage. I'm about to go out with a bang, and just kept, still within the parameters of my pregame ritual.
Right.
We decided to go with that, bro.
Okay.
But yeah, like I said, it was a method to my madness too. It's intentional.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. Yeah. So it's funny. I totally forgot about the red in your hair in that first show.
Yeah. It's very conservative. It was very like, let's see how this goes.
And the silver too, I remember it, but I never put it together like, oh yeah, he dyed his hair for the last show too. So this makes sense,
And then the same thing goes for my guest posing routines, because I feel like whenever I step on that stage, whether it be me competing or just performing, for the fans, it's the same ritual,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it adds just another element of like uniqueness and like variety. That makes sense to me. That's really cool. So don't want to keep you on for too much longer. But so you've grown like a ton. Just talking about you as a bodybuilder. The last show you did was Arnold, right? You haven't competed since then?
Yeah. And
you've grown like a ton just in the last, year and a half, right? Even with that Arnold prep in there. What do you have your sights set on? What's next?
So we're thinking about 2024.
Okay.
Would love to go back to the Arnold.
Yeah.
I don't even want to do any other show, just from that experience. It's a very prestigious show. It's well ran. I think it's very, very valuable for an athlete, and athlete who's able to compete at that show because of the exposure you get.
Yeah.
I still get people from around the world saying, "Hey, I remember you compete at the Arnold, right?" So you get that to this day. Even nice. Like coaching, I get a lot of coaching inquiries, and recently, I had like 2-3 people mention that. So it's very good for any athlete in terms of business to do that show. But we're thinking about early spring, maybe early summer, hopefully.
So another year of growing then, at least.
Yeah.
Where are you at with your weight cap right now?
This morning I woke up at 248.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Last time you competed, how far off from the weight cap? You didn't have to try to make weight, did you?
13 pounds.
You have 13 pounds up to go.
Yeah, man. I was 209. My weight cap was 222, I believe.
Damn. You were 209? You're like 6 foot, right?
I'm 5'11".
Yeah, damn. Okay. Well, you were peeled.
Yeah.
That's sick. Okay. Yeah, so that's a lot of good upward room.
Yeah, man. I'm really excited, bro. 13 pounds is a lot of muscle, bro.
It is. People don't realize quite how much that is. On an open guy, that's a lot. On a classic guy, that's substantial. That's like physique changing.
Yeah, for sure.
How do you feel about, so you're pretty much saying like, yeah, I'm not going to compete for at least another year. Obviously you have other outlets, to express yourself as a bodybuilder. You're going to get guest posing continuously because, you're in demand and you put on a spectacular show.
For sure.
Is that something that ever tugs at you a little bit, that bothers you? Like the idea of not competing for such a long period of time, or are your eyes so kind of set on the prize that you just are okay with, taking the time needed to get there? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think like what you just said, that last part, I know it does kind of suck. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's be real. Like, everybody wants that fast paced. They want it and they want it now.
Want to be in it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's human. That's our human instinct. We want that instant gratification. But I know, realistically speaking, it's going to take time and patience to put on that muscle tissue, especially, at the level that we're trying to take it. I can step on stage in 2023 and be improved. Yeah. but how much, to like what magnitude would I be improved?
Yeah.
So I just want to be at a place where I'm comfortable enough to say, okay, I'm able to compete with these guys at the highest level. And thankfully, I was able to experience that early on in my career, third pro show at Arnold Classic, to really be like, okay, this is what, okay, I know what I need to do.
Yeah.
So had I not did Arnold Classic, we may have done the show in 2023.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
Because it's different when you look on Instagram and on TV and actually being or standing next to these guys, you're like,
oh yeah,
definitely like a year and a half, 2 years difference.
Okay.
Right, they're easy, you know. And with that being said, obviously, you know, you still want to keep health priority, so that plays a role and factors in that timeline. Because I can maybe put on that much muscle in a year, but what would I need to do to what would I sacrifice? How much do I need to take? You know, to get there.
Yeah, I hear you.
So, yeah.
Well, I think you have an advantage then in that regard, in that you kind of made it is not the right word, but you got to compete at the almost the pinnacle, right, of the sport early on in your pro career, and that I think it sounds like solidified for you. This is where I belong, you know, and so this is where I belong, but I have more work to do, right? So that makes a lot of sense, and yeah, I can totally see if you hadn't done that, how things could have gone differently, because you know you didn't have that. There's you could get like first place at a show, and that might tell you, oh yeah, this is where I belong. But also, I mean, getting to such a prestigious spot, regardless of placing, is a really similar thing, right? Even more so because it's the second biggest stage in the world, with the most eyes on you could have.
I mean, when you think about it, I played second at my pro debut.
Yeah,
against Lord Jones. That's a monster, bro.
That's right.
Like, it's not like I could have made it to Olympia if I wanted to, you know, but like I said, timeline, it just wasn't the right time in terms of, you know, health. And it would have been, for me, it would have been a waste of time where I could have used that time to build, you know. So that's why we decided what we wanted to do. You know, we decided 2024.
If you could choose either one, would you pick going to the Arnold or going to the Olympia if you had to pick one or the other?
That's a good question. And I only could pick one or the other, right?
Yeah, I could cut this out too.
I would say the Arnold, to be honest.
The Arnold, yeah.
I the Arnold, man.
I had a feeling. Why is that?
Why is that?
Yeah.
Well, I think it has a little bit more meaning behind it, I feel. Just to me. And then two, I mean, you get to shake hands with Arnold, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's something that I really want to do before he's gone off this earth, man, is be able to stand and hold that trophy and be like, yo, Arnold, I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Oh, and get that shot, you know.
I agree.
That shot.
I feel like for Classic specifically, there's just something magical about the Arnold that the Olympia, as great as it is, just doesn't quite capture. I don't know if it's because of Arnold himself. I don't know if it's because supposedly posing is actually factored into the.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's part of the reason too, is they honor the posing, and I think they're paying more than Olympia for Classic guys.
Maybe for Classic, I'm not sure about that, but
I think they paid 60 or 60.
Okay.
I think the year that I competed, it was 60.
Okay.
Oh no, 40, and then I think they bumped it to 60 that following year. And I think we were only getting like 40 or 30 at the Olympia at that time.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think I'm not sure about this year, but I think they pay more.
Yeah,
so
that's just another reason.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
Yeah, but I definitely see the Arnold is like a showcase for artistry more so than a showcase for, I guess, bodybuilding. You know, even though it's both, but you get what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's why Classic was brought out. You know, I think the sport needed a little bit more entertainment. You know, just little bit more beautiful physiques.
Grace, yeah.
Yeah, I think we had a lot. We have a lot of monsters, and don't get me wrong. Like, I love to see myself. I'm a fan too. I'm an athlete and a fan of the sport.
Oh yeah,
so I watch these big guys. I'm like, yo, this shit's crazy, you know. But then we also need that balance. You know what I'm saying, man? We got to balance that out.
I agree. Yeah, I think there was a lot of griping for a while that open guys, people were saying they weren't taking posing seriously enough, and the routines left a lot to be desired and things like that, trying to compare them to like the 80s and 90s, you know, which I understand, and I've made those complaints before myself. But a couple things. One, I think open guys are spending a lot more time perfecting their posing now. I mean, you hear like Hunter and Neil and these guys talk about how their coaches are putting them through rounds of posing. And I mean, look at like Nick Walker's posing was a big topic of discussion last year, how he's holding his poses and not gassing out. But it's different, right? They're never going to be able to pose like a Lee Labrada because they can't move their bodies that gracefully. And that's okay. But it's really cool that we have a division that allows for that. And so personally, I wish that the posing was more of the scoring, you know, for classic specifically, for classic only. I feel like that would actually make the division truly earn its name classic. Yeah,
I agree. It's so crazy because I had this conversation with Melissa at the guest posing just recently. We were saying the same thing. We're like, because like if somebody comes to the stage, they're peeled, they look good, but their posing is off, and then you have another guy who's looks just as good, but their posing is on, but he might not be as good as the guy who's super peeled and has a great.
Still give it to him. Yeah,
I think the guy with the better posing should take it.
I agree.
When we're talking about classic here, right?
Yeah,
I think that should be, because if they're wanting you to come on stage, the judges want you to know how to pose, right?
You're putting on a show.
Yeah, right. You're taking that time out of your day leading up to the show, working on your posing and putting together a project. I think it deserves recognition, and I think it deserves its place on the scorecard. Like, I agree. I think it should become a part of preparing for a bodybuilding show.
Yeah, especially in classic. I have two arguments for that too, because I've heard the discussion has been, is bodybuilding a sport or is it more like a pageant, right? But either way, it makes sense to weigh posing more heavily in the scoring for classic, and here's why. For a pageant, it's not just about how you look. There's also an aspect of how you present yourself on stage, how you answer the questions. I've never watched a beauty pageant in my life, so, you know, forgive me if I'm wrong about some things, but I'm assuming it's all the little subtleties, how your hair and makeup is, how you like giggle at the stupid questions, how, you know, your talent, because they're supposed to do a talent, right? It's all these things. It's not just how you show up looking, right? Exactly. And so you can outperform someone who looks objectively, quote unquote, better, right? You know, so for the pageant perspective, it makes sense. From a sport perspective, posing is fucking hard, right? It requires athleticism, it requires mobility, it requires, you know, not to mention being able to put together a good routine, which takes a lot of time and practice and planning. Posing is the most athletic part of a bodybuilding competition. You know what I mean? You know, there's all the workouts and stuff, but I don't think that's not necessarily what makes it a sport. What makes it a sport is you're getting in an arena, a stage, and you're performing physically by posing. And so your routine should weigh a lot more heavily in your scoring, because that's the athletic endeavor that you're engaging in on that day. So whether you think it's a pageant or a sport, it makes sense to weigh posing more heavily on both of those fronts. And so you can't tell me that it shouldn't be.
That's a good ass point. That's a really good point. And, you know, just to add to that, you know, and it doesn't have to, and everybody can bring their own style of posing too. Right? The eye does not lie to you, right? To a certain extent.
Right. But if you like what you like.
Yeah. And when it comes to art, your eye's gonna tell you that shit looks like trash or it looks good. Like, it's no gray area.
And that's it. That's it.
Whether it doesn't matter what your style is, if it looks good, it looks good. Like that's art. You know what I mean? So people think like, oh, I gotta bring that caliber like Rough Diesel, or I gotta bring a caliber like Lee Labrada. No, you don't. just put together a project that's well thought out and that people can tell you put time into it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then record based off of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm thinking about the different people that I think of as really good posers right now. You and Terrence and Rachel, and we'll say Logan Franklin, and you guys, all of your styles are very unique. You know, the way you move your body, the way you move into your transitions, the way you finish out your transitions, the way you play with cadence, all these things, they're unique. But I can't say that I like one more than the other, because if I see the routine, I just know, wow, this is cool. This is graceful. This is beautiful. I like this. Versus someone who doesn't put time into it. And I just go, this doesn't make me feel the same, or just doesn't make me feel as much, you know?
Right.
So
it's a feeling, it's a very authentic feeling that you get, you know, when you see any form of art, you know, you're able to really like relate to it, or it gives you a sense of, it gives you energy, or it makes you feel a certain way. It has a strong influence on your emotions.
Yes.
That's how you know something is really good.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I think about like those Rothko paintings, the really expensive, famous paintings that are just like a bunch of shapes, you know, and people are like, what's the point of that? But I don't remember what I was watching that mentioned this, but it's like, it's not about how much skill was involved, or it's not about anything about the piece itself, about what went into making it. Although that's important. What matters at the end of the day is what you feel when you look at it.
Exactly.
And that's art to me, is like, oh yeah, you're creating something for the purpose of making somebody feel something when they see it or when they experience it. Yeah. Anyway, you know, yeah, this is not super important, but when I was like 18 and had just barely started working out, I just gotten clean, and I was just starting to do like push-ups and sit-ups and shit in my room. I went with my family to see a Cirque du Soleil performance, which I don't know if you've ever seen or if you know what those are. It's like these impressive like displays of like acrobatics and people like doing like crazy shit, and it's like dance. It's like they're acting. So they're all it's a story. It's like a play, but every act is people doing, you have people doing like, I can't even describe it, like dudes throwing each other up in the air, you know what I mean? And doing like these crazy calisthenics things. You have women like climbing up those silk rope things and doing floats in the air. You have people, we have people juggling while jumping off of shit and flying all. But the dudes are all shirtless, and like the women are, you can see the muscle, and you could see their bodies working and doing these extraordinary things. And I remember I was like 100, maybe 130 pounds at that time. I'd finally put on a little bit of weight, which is saying something, right? But I was just getting into working out, and I saw these people doing these impressive things with their bodies. I saw what their bodies looked like when they were moving and doing this thing. And I just thought to myself, like, I want that, I want to feel what it feels like to be doing what they're doing. I want to feel what it feels like to be doing extraordinary things with my body, that other people see and can appreciate the mastery and the effort and the artistry that goes into it. And that was what attracted me more into fitness, and eventually bodybuilding, and eventually competing, and eventually classic physique, right?
Yeah.
Not that anybody cares, but just that made me remember that story. And that was like right at the beginning of my whole fitness journey. And that really kind of sealed the deal for me. It was like, I'm going to keep going. I want to do something cool with my body. And so now, all 8-9 years later, to see people really doing that and see that becoming like so popular in the mainstream, and get to know guys like you who are actually making that happen and producing this stuff at the highest level, it just means so much to me. And it's so cool for me to be here now, looking back at where all that started. So if you stuck around for that, thanks for listening. Jarek, I really want to thank you for being on today.
For sure. I appreciate it, man.
I appreciate you. Yeah,
I gotta do some more of these for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have you on again. It's been too long. I think the last time we had like a long phone call was back in like May or June or something like that.
Talking about YouTube and
yeah, and here we are. I told you, man, like, hey, if you don't start putting stuff on YouTube in a week, I'm gonna get after you. And now here we are filming a video for YouTube.
Yeah.
Uh,
I got some YouTube thing. I just dropped a video on YouTube just recently too.
yeah. So where can people find you, Jarek? Where's the best place for your social, your coaching, all this stuff?
So Instagram, you're gonna find everything through Instagram.
Okay.
My tag is Jarek_Crew. You click the link in my bio, you get funneled to my YouTube, coaching applications, posing, you name it.
Okay, right on. So we'll link Jarek below. Any parting words for anybody?
Man, keep fucking going. You know, do it for the love of the passion first. You know, and like I said before, you know, the other shit is not gonna last. You know, do it because you love it. You know, if you don't love it, stop doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, so that's all I got to say. You know, just
Right
be true to you.
Right on. All right, everybody. Jarek Crew. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, peace.